Everyone ready? Good all the way around? Well, good afternoon, and I want to thank you for joining me today. Here we're about 12 hours before what is very likely to be a government shutdown unless cooler heads prevail here. And I can't speak clearly enough. This really sits right in the hands of Senator Chuck Schumer, who leads the Senate Democrats. That's not hyperbole. This is just fact. You know, our senior senator conducts the U.S. Senate Democratic caucus like an orchestra, and he has the power to stop this right now. Before tonight's midnight deadline, he can do the right thing and make sure the votes are there to pass a clean spending bill that will keep the government open and keep it serving the taxpayers here in Western New York, the Southern Tier, and across America. But as of right now, he's refusing to do so because he's answering to the angry leftists who control his party, who want to take his head for what he did in March, which was the right thing. And he knows it. He knows why he's doing this. And he is willing to forsake what's best for the country to protect his own power. All you need to do is rewind the tape back to March, when at the 11th hour, Senator Schumer allowed Democratic senators to vote to keep the government open. And the fury that ensued from radicals in his own party tells you everything you need to know about what's driving this phony crisis today. Their sole mission is to try to hurt President Trump, and they don't care that they're hurting the American taxpayer in the process. House Republicans, we did our job. On September 19th, we passed a continuing resolution that keeps the government open through November 21st. 52-day extension, clean Biden-level spending, no policy changes, no riders, no poison pills. But we did what we had to do to prevent a costly shutdown. This clean CR, continuing resolution for non-Washington speakers, it just continues the same exact current funding that we're operating in. It's straightforward, temporary funding bill that extends the previous year's spending levels from when Joe Biden was in the White House, without those added policy changes, budget adjustments, any sort of riders. There's nothing to object to in this bill. It ensures our troops stationed around the world can continue to get their paychecks. Their families hang in the balance while they're overseas. They now have to figure out how to pay their bills. It protects anyone on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all those recipients from the confusion of a government shutdown. Because there's not just, most of those people would be protected for their benefits because that's mandatory spending. But the confusion that surrounds a government shutdown puts everybody in a tailspin. It ensures programs like WIC that provide important nutrition assistance to mothers, infants, and children can continue without disruption. It protects against lapses in food safety inspections and other critical government services. A shutdown would simply be a blow to our economy, which is humming along nicely. And it's a tremendously wasteful cost to the taxpayer. The last 3 shutdowns cost nearly $4 billion. That's just a waste. And this is just all for purely political purposes. And it's really disappointing that we're there. It also, will slow us down at the airport. Those TSA agents, you're going to have longer lines. You're going to have less people on duty. And they all have to show up to work without getting their paycheck until after Washington sorts this out, until after Senator Schumer's temper tantrum ends. And they stop hiding behind the filibuster. They start doing what's right for the American people. Because I've read a few quotes today saying Republicans run the show in Washington. They have the presidency, the House, and the Senate. And they're right. They're absolutely right. But Senator Schumer has the filibuster. And that's what he's flexing. He's flexing this obscure piece of power for purely political purposes. This is accomplishing nothing. All we're trying to do is ask for more time to negotiate an honest appropriations process that will still require Democratic input because of that filibuster. And our appropriators that I've talked to say they've made progress. They need more time. It's not going to be given to them if we are in a shutdown loggerheads for the next foreseeable amount of time. And Senator Schumer and Senate Democrats, they know all of this. But let's just go back to the tape. Let's go back to Senator Schumer in his own words, because I think this is the best way to understand how artificial his fight here is. Senator Schumer said in September of 2024, a shutdown would mean chaos, heartache for the American people. What's changed now, Chuck? Schumer in February 2024. Even a partial shutdown would threaten services for moms and kids, hurt our veterans, hurt farmers, home buyers, and so much more. What's changed now, Chuck? Chuck Schumer in September 23. Make no mistake, a shutdown would be a terrible outcome for the country. It's hard for me to believe that some say they actually want a shutdown. What insanity. What's changed now, Chuck? Chuck Schumer, September 23. A shutdown would degrade troop readiness and devastate our southern border. Small businesses would lose access to capital. Home buyers would be unable to secure loans. Our supply chains would be imperiled. And the cost for American families would go up and up, all because of a needless shutdown caused by a few extremists. May I ask, what's changed now, Chuck? Chuck Schumer, September 2019. We have until the end of the month for both parties to work together and fund the federal government. One of our most basic responsibilities. Everyone should have learned their lesson the last time. Nobody should want to punish the American people with a government shutdown. So what's changed now, Chuck? Schumer in 2013, and this one might be the most telling. As we said 1,000 times, we're happy to discuss how to fund the government, but not with a gun to our heads. You are not going to get us to give in to extortion. You are not going to take us hostage, and as hostage, millions of innocent Americans, and succeed in getting us to do something you want, and we don't, and they don't. So what's changed now, Chuck? Why the change in heart here? Do the right thing for the American taxpayer. Do the right thing for the people here in Western New York and the Southern Tier and across this great state, the 19 plus million people that you were elected to represent. Make sure that the federal government, that we all pay way too high a taxes to fund, is there to serve the people that hire the people. And that hasn't happened. Ironically, we're contending with very unserious demands from Schumer and his party. They want $1.5 trillion in partisan spending, including restoring taxpayer-funded free health care for illegals, allowing able-bodied Americans to collect taxpayer-funded social welfare benefits while refusing to work, and extending Biden's COVID-era spending, all while cutting an additional $50 billion for rural health facilities. It's just a non-starter, period. And we're not going to be forced through extortion and a gun to our head to accept these ridiculous demands. These are things that the American people asked for last election day, and we have delivered them. And now, Chuck wants to use this one moment for a 52-day extension of federal funding to reverse all of that progress for our country. The American people gave Republicans majorities in the House and the Senate and the White House because they wanted the nonstop runaway train spending that we saw over the last 4 years to end. And we have made a huge down payment on that in what we did in budget reconciliation. But instead of reflecting on how the Democratic Party has gone so far astray from the mainstream, Senator Schumer is now doubling down on same exact failed policies that cost his party their election last fall. Democrats, they aren't protecting health care. They are weaponizing critical services as an excuse to shut down the government to protect themselves from their radical base. That 20, 30% of the people that vote in their primaries that they're all so worried about. And I hope every American and every person in Western New York that's watching this play out, because they're getting a front row seat to dishonest politics at its very worst. They only pretend to care about federal workers or vulnerable populations when it helps them politically. Now, all the federal workers, some will be furloughed. Some will essentially get vacation days that they'll get paid for after the fact when we solve this eventually. Some of those workers, that they should care about greatly are soldiers, our Customs and U.S. Border Patrol agents, the doctors and the nurses and the people that take care of the patients at the VA. They all have to go to work every day, and they don't know when they're going to get a paycheck. And they still have to show up and go in. We heard all sorts of crying the blues when DOGE was working to streamline the federal government and eliminate unnecessary positions earlier this year. And now we find out that the Democrats that wanted to raise holy hell, they didn't give a damn about those federal workers because they're willing to make those people go there and end up in a financially precarious situation with uncertainty as to when their next paycheck should come. They are only pretending to care for those federal workers. They want to derail the progress that we've succeeded in this year with disruption and chaos, and this is politically orchestrated, and it's an attack using Americans as their pawns. If it happens, Senator Schumer and Senate Democrats, they own this shutdown. We have passed clean funding. It's not controversial. It's just an extension. We just want a little more time so we can continue the appropriations process. And if they want to put meaningful reforms in that, let's have that debate. Let's have that discussion. Let's have that back and forth. I think, the president showed willingness to work with them, but only if we keep the government open. And it is time for Schumer to stop playing these games and just do what's right for the people. Lives are on the line. The American people are watching. And, at this point, I'd be happy to take any of your questions.
How are you feeling? There will be a shutdown or there won't be come 12/01?
I guess I'm talking to y'all today because I hope some of our viewers can throw a phone call into Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand and say, do what's right. Put the politics aside for a second.
I mean, what's your gut tell you?
It doesn't.
That's why we're at the moment we are. He's using the filibuster to screw the American people.
You had mentioned that, I believe you said the last time we had shutdowns, it cost, or maybe a particular shutdown, it cost $4 billion. In what way did it cost?
In what Office of Management Budget tells me, that a shutdown costs about $1 billion a week in terms of just having to recalibrate, figure out the furloughs, all the additional spending across the expanse of the federal government. It comes at great cost. It also, sets our military back in terms of projects and construction and weapon systems. All of those things have to come to a screeching halt. This is not good policy. I think that we should eliminate shutdowns as a tool. You've never heard me advocate for a shutdown. Shutdowns are dangerous, they're foolish, they don't accomplish anything, and they create phony political crises, like the one Chuck Schumer is advocating for right now. It doesn't have to be this way. The American people deserve better. That's why we passed it. We didn't put any gimmicks in our CR. I mean, we could have put political language there, changes in policy, and force people to make a false choice, either keep the government open with what we want or else. Didn't do that. Just flat spending.
Economically, Wall Street is very skittish about the talk of a shutdown, and it's being reflected today. What's your thoughts about that?
I think shutdowns are terrible. I really have never been an advocate, no matter who's in the White House. I think, just like debt ceiling, I think debt ceiling amendments and playing brinksmanship is everything that the public is going to hate about the way we run our government. I think it's, everyone realizes we're going to get reopened at some point, and this is just a phony political crisis created for certain politicians that have a temper tantrum. They've never worked. No one that's ever forced a shutdown has come out the winner. And Senator Schumer won't come out the winner here either. I think, he knuckled under, he was a loser with his base. If he does the right thing here, he'll be a winner with the American people. So let's get serious about governing. That the president welcome bipartisan discussion going forward if we keep the government open. That's a big if. All the cards are in Senator Schumer's hands right now.
I know in Albany, we had problems with budgets for years, not in the past. It has come up before, it's been pointed out, that members of Congress will be paid while this goes on, but as you said, the military will not. Do you think that perhaps members of Congress, there was an effort, I believe, to pass legislation that would stop, not just your pay, and I'm not saying for you out, but anybody in Congress or the Senate. Would you be in support of such a measure? Would it put pressure on everybody, Republican and Democrat, to seriously negotiate and try to avoid these CRs?
No, in many of us in the past, I've never been in a shutdown since I was elected. Fortunately, we've always avoided it at the 11th hour. Members of Congress, at least in my party, typically put a letter forward that said withhold my pay until the shutdown is over to show solidarity with the people that are sacrificing. We are paid once a month as the salary calendar goes. Hopefully this doesn't go that far, but I will certainly cross that bridge when it comes. But I do think withholding things keeps people accountable. I mean, there was the Senate can do the right thing this afternoon. They have till midnight. The president will stay up to sign it. We'll keep the government afloat. This is just a manufactured crisis that doesn't need to happen. But there was a bill in the Senate yesterday that one of my colleagues from South Dakota is the co-sponsor of a impending bill in the House that would eliminate this whole art form of shutdown talk. And would, if the government runs out of funding, there's an automatic continuing resolution. I think that would be a better way for us to govern the country, and I would fully support that if given the opportunity to vote for it in the House. The Senate blocked it, and there was a few Republicans who didn't support it either, but mostly every single Democrat voted against it as well. I think creating these phony moments to just exert political leverage, I think, is a terrible way to govern a country.
Just to clarify that, would you support seeing a measure again brought up saying if the Congress doesn't get the job done, and not just you, but anybody?
If we're in a shutdown, I will withhold my pay until the shutdown is over.
Should that be a formal legislation?
I'd be fine if we put that in the rules of the House. I would absolutely be fine if we did that. Because, I mean, these shutdowns, again, don't last forever. I wasn't trying to avoid the question at all. I thought I'd answer it, but we shouldn't be paid while our federal, troops are overseas not receiving their paycheck.
Are there some concessions that you'd be willing to give to avoid the shutdown? I know they're asking for all, but would there be some?
I think that if they had something that was like one single message, it would be open to discussion. But it also wouldn't be on like a short-term extension. If we're talking about a year-long CR, like we're currently functioning under, because we couldn't get we couldn't come to agreement on a full appropriations package. We could have done it before the election, but once the election ended, the Democrats didn't want to do it anymore.
Unknown caller.
It's yours, Jim. For the record, it's not mine. But I think if we're talking a year-long CR, there's plenty of room for negotiation. Obviously, there would have to be, because they can use the filibuster, which is unique to the Senate, which means you need 60 votes to shut debate. And it's been used throughout time, in many ways. What we've been able to accomplish this year, we've done through budget reconciliation where filibuster didn't apply. This is the first time Senator Schumer has had the ability to try to shut down the administration's priorities by using the filibuster. I think, obviously, if we're looking at a year-long CR, that's the moment to negotiate. For just an extension, this doesn't make sense. And no one's going to, again, as Senator Schumer said several years ago, be extorted at gunpoint for what their demands are.
Now, I'm not sure what all the concessions are. Is this something where you could give the concessions through the extension and then come back?
No, because he wants big picture policies that we just roll back as a matter of budget reconciliation. I mean, we're talking about trillions of dollars and you're spending, far more than we're talking about spending in 52 days of the government process. They're also trying to, extend COVID era emergency spending measures that I think most Americans understand have to phase out at some point. I mean, COVID emergency spending should be over because COVID's pretty well over. And you don't see a whole lot of restrictions on our economy anymore because of COVID.
Did you, by chance, see the state controller's report that came out on Medicaid?
When did he issue the report?
It came out in September. If you haven't seen it, then
I'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, separate on
sure.
this.
Can you talk a little bit about some of those concessions, specifically extending the ACA tax credits? I know that the House did pass the CR, it got blocked in the Senate. There were 2 Republicans who voted against that House-passed Republican CR. Can you respond to that and maybe also touch on those ACA tax extension credits?
I don't know why 2 of the House Republicans didn't vote for it and several of them weren't there for the vote. It was on a quick Friday night. We're going to see, where they all are today. I can't speak to why they made the decisions they did. I mean, they each represent a different state. The ACA, there's a lot of differences of opinion in Congress, and I think an abrupt end to a program like that is tough to do all at once. I think that many of us want to see it get to an eventual end, but understand that there's got to be some guardrails to get people used to not having that additional subsidy. The problem, the Democrats created this program and they put a sunset in it on purpose for 5 years and then it ends. Probably went too long, but this is a subsidy of the health insurance. This isn't money back in the pockets of people. This is subsidizing the health industry who's still charging record premiums. There's really no incentive for them to do more or less if they've got an unlimited fountain of federal cash flowing at them. So there's no means tests on these programs. There's rampant instances of fraud that's been found where people are literally signing people up on the street that don't even know they've entered into a health care enrollment thing because they get a commission from it. So I think the idea of a lot of these things sound great, but what is the end result? We still have increasing premiums year over year. You still have record profits for the insurance industry, and you're not getting better outcomes with that. So throwing more money at the problem isn't always the solution to the problem. Getting things in line, I think, with some real fiscal discipline, could be. I do think that we have to find an off-ramp on how to get off of these subsidies that were there as emergency COVID-era spending. I mean, I can't stress that enough. This was created for an emergency. That was an unprecedented pandemic situation. There's still always going to be the natural subsidies within the Obamacare premium. That doesn't change. That's not what we're talking about. This is a thing that was created for a 5-year window of time around the pandemic. And I think that there's open room for negotiations. You don't want people to get hit by a ton of bricks, but this moment is not the moment that there's a massive concession on this. If we're talking about a year-long CR, long-term spending bills, that would be a more appropriate way, but not our way or the highway, take it or leave it, shut down the government or be dead.
Are you open to extending those tax credits?
I'm open to
or-
having a debate and discussion, you know, we have to, you know, hear from the administration, hear from our colleagues. I mean, I know that about 6,000 people in my district are receiving those credits right now. I mean, it's a relatively small sum of people when you represent 750,000. But I'm searching for more answers on exactly what this is going to. Everything I have read so far leads me to believe this has jacked up the profit margins for the insurance companies. And they've still raised premiums extensively. Any
Can we
other
go
questions?
off topic for a second?
Sure.
Excuse me. The border shutdown for commercial traffic. I realize it's a Canadian issue more so than a US issue, but your sense, especially because it really does impact our economy.
When I had your station on in the car this morning, that's all I was hearing about is this problem at the Peace Bridge, the Rainbow Bridge, the
Yeah.
Queens and Lewison Bridge. Anytime that there's tension at the bridge, I mean, you know, that puts angst on our economy and our region, the free flow of goods back and forth. We gotta find out why this happened. You know, was this a cybersecurity issue? Was this just antiquated infrastructure? We have been in touch this morning with all of our United States agencies that have jurisdiction over the border. They assure us this is a purely Canadian issue. I guess we await word from the Canadian government why their system collapsed. Hopefully, has it ended yet?
No.
Okay, so it's still going on. I know that we're closing down entrances to the 190. It's a serious problem, but you know, I think I'm not concluding that this is a cyber attack, but you know, that's what we have to worry about going forward is why we need to continue to invest in our cyber infrastructure because systems like this collapse, just like you've seen a few airlines have their entire boarding systems collapse or TSA, their mainframe goes down and all of a sudden you've got a real logistical catastrophe. So hopefully this gets resolved quickly. The Canadian government can figure out what went wrong with their system. But it's something that we should be highly aware to what happened, how it happened, and how it can be avoided in the future.
But just the image of the miles of trucks backed up along the thruway, doesn't it bring home to the average person just how important our border position is?
Our border position is critical. I mean, this is, you know, we're a binational community. We have a lot of free flow of goods and services back and forth. I mean, certainly a lot of, 68% of all Canadian exports come here to the United States. I mean, we are a critical part of their economy. We certainly, you know, love to welcome our, you know, Canadian friends to come here, and many of them have second homes here. A lot of our people have second homes there. But I think that this really begs the question, how did it happen? Why did it happen? How can it be prevented from happening again?
It's also pretty visual to the average person about this is.
If you're
what-
stuck in traffic, it's real visual. But no, it's an important relationship. I mean, you certainly have, you know, my full attention there, and it has to get stronger. And my hope is we can have a good bilateral trade deal soon. I know that's not related to the topic at hand, but hopefully part of that is they get their infrastructure in place so that we can get those goods across the border, because it's really our trucks going into Canada, not Canadian trucks coming into the US.
And on that point, though, are you hearing from the White House when you speak to them? I know obviously the tariff situation, which we've asked you about before, and you yourself were concerned, obviously, because you represent.
I
the
remain
border
concerned. I want to see it get done.
But do you feel, from what you hear with the White House, are they more satisfied when they heard that the Canadians said, okay, we'll put $1 billion in to try to stop any drug trafficking, things of that nature, kind of across the border? Or, and I don't know, were parties kind of like all over the place?
He's all over the place. And I think that really we have to, now luckily, even though some of you more than others have made an awful lot about Canadian tariffs being covered this year, 85% of all goods are covered by USMCA and haven't been subject to tariffs. I was glad to see the Canadians take their punitive tariffs off our goods. I think that's a good faith effort. Carney is all over the place. And we've got to dial that in, and hopefully we can have a good, solid trade deal it takes USMCA and perfects it, between our two countries. I really don't, I really hope that we're not looking at a continent-wide trade agreement, because I don't believe it's honest, because Mexico does not enjoy the same standard of living that we do here in the United States. And, really, let's face it, we've lost a lot of manufacturing jobs in this region to Mexico because of the low wages, the lack of the same standard of living that we have here. The Canadians obviously enjoy a fine standard of living. And I think it's a more honest deal if it's between our two nations.
But do you sense the White House is at least saying, okay, they're trying to do some things, or?
I think there's a lot of discussions, they don't really broadcast that. When you hear progress, you see certain meetings taking place. I mean, I think there's an ongoing discussion between Commerce, the Treasury, the Canadian officials. Hopefully we can get there very soon. I think Carney has to put a little more forward to get there, but they've made the dedication to the border. That actually happened before the parliamentary elections there in Canada. But Carney, a lot of times politics gets in the way, and you don't want to look like you're knuckling under to the United States. He's got to seem tough enough to his people. But ending the retaliatory tariffs, I thought was a step in the right direction. We want to get to a place where we have fair and equal trade between the countries, but it's got to be equal. It hasn't been equal. I mean, ask our dairy farmers how equal things are, and they'll tell you about the 268% tariff that's put on our goods that go there.
I just have one more question for me. The Energy Choice Act, your
Yes.
Energy Choice Act, where do things stand? Are you still hopeful you can get it through?
Current plan is for that bill to be marked up in the Energy and Commerce Committee on October 21st, which is our next full committee markup, where bills go out of committee and get to the floor, or they're eligible to be voted on at the floor at that point under a rule bill. I've already been talks with the majority leader that says floor calendar. He knows that it's coming out of committee that day, and I told him I'm going to race this. I got to get this off, across the floor. He understood. He says he's going to help me do that. So this could get in the way of a lot of things. A Schumer shutdown, all other legislation ceases. We won't be doing any other work other than trying to get the government reopened. And, it's another reason why I want to see us avoid the shutdown, because we all, members of Congress from all over the country are fighting for policy areas that they care greatly about. I believe I have a life and death situation here in Western New York. And we want that opportunity to get this bill across the floor, to have that markup continue to be scheduled on October 21st, and not be subject to a shutdown. Shutdown serves nobody.
Do you have the Senate, and do you think you have the White House support?
As soon as we get the House bill through, the Senate moves slow, as you know. And getting it through the House is the first step. And then, we hope to have the White House work with us to get the Senate to move.
Over the winter, you had a meeting out in Lancaster with a bunch of restaurants.
Mhm.
Anything come out of that?
I think it's always good to have discussions with business owners, listen to what's going on with them. I mean, at that point, no tax on tips was a conversation. Now it's law. And they were enthusiastic about it. And, we continue to have those ongoing discussions with, National Restaurant Association, their state affiliates. I mean, they come and visit me in Washington, several times a year, and talk to a lot of the restaurateurs that are active in it. But, there's a lot of pressure coming down from just the cost of doing business in this state. And that's, I think, their biggest barriers. It's really not as much federal policy it's state. It's just a tough place to do business. And we see too many restaurants go up on a for sale block, and also just close in our area. It's a sad commentary. Any other questions? Have I answered everyone's questions? Okay, I don't want you to leave here and say, he refused to answer our questions. I always try to make sure we answer every single question.
You're always
So-
good about that.
Thank you very